Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Walt Bauer, and I am the Pre-Service Training Coordinator at the Human Development Institute at the University of Kentucky. Welcome to the Human Development Institute's second fall seminar in the HDI seminar series. My pronouns are he, him, his. My brief visual description is I am a white male wearing glasses with hazel eyes and a blue collared shirt with a blue and white and black tie. My virtual background is a three-story brick building that has offices for the Human Development Institute on the University of Kentucky campus. We use Zoom for our virtual platform. Audio is provided through the virtual platform. Our speakers will provide an opportunity for questions today, and we welcome questions from all of our participants. Please type your questions for our speakers in the Q&A box for a robust question and answer session. If you hover over the bottom of your Zoom screen, on the Zoom toolbar is the Q&A option. Please use the chat box for technical questions. We have real-time captioning for the webinar in the closed captioning feature. Turn on the captioning by clicking on the closed caption button at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and then clicking Show Subtitle. Should you have questions about CEUs, you can contact me. My email address is walt.bauer@uky.edu. Again, my email address is walt.bauer@uky.edu. We will have a 5-minute break at the midpoint of the seminar. Please take a moment to complete our brief evaluation. You will receive an email that provides a link to access the session evaluation after the webinar. It is really helpful as we plan for upcoming webinars. The title of the seminar today is Relationships and Dating for People with Disabilities. It's a pleasure and a privilege to introduce our presenters today. I would like to introduce Rachel Lanter. Rachel is the Executive Director at Build Inclusion and a clinical social worker at the Compass Center. Cody Clark is a professional magician and autistic self-advocate from Louisville, Kentucky. Micah P. Cirquilla is a autistic, multiply disabled researcher, community organizer, educator, and a former Kentucky Leadership Education and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities LEND trainee. Allison Borden is a consultant, coach, presenter, advocate, parent, and a former Kentucky LEND trainee. I am now going to turn it over to Rachel to get us started.
All right. Thank you for that introduction, Walt. Let me get us started over here. Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay.
Yes, we can.
All right. Okay. Let's get started. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome again to the HGI seminar series. I'm Rachel Lanter, and I have the privilege of kicking us off today. For a quick visual description, I am a white woman with shoulder-length brown hair, and I'm wearing a purple-ish sweater. In some lights, it looks brown, so that's why I say ish. My background is my home library with black bookcases full of books. And I will say I have a dog at home, so if you hear barking, just ignore him. All right. So as Walt said, I am the executive director at Build Inclusion. We are a nonprofit dedicated to supporting folks with disabilities in finding and maintaining employment. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, and I do offer mental health services both at Build Inclusion and the Compass Center. All of my services are person-centered, strengths-based, and I use inclusive, evidence-based practice. So we're going to talk a little bit about person-centeredness throughout this whole conversation. So don't forget that terminology. Let me get oh, why is this not turning? SOS, there we go. All right. Okay, so anyway, thank you again for joining this conversation about relationships and dating for people with disabilities. My role is kind of to start by going over some information that will set the stage for the following presenters to share with you from more of a lived experience perspective.
Yeah.
I have a ton of research and resources that I did not put specifically in the slides for the sake of like diminishing visual clutter. But if anyone is interested And any of the research, any of the sources that I've used to kind of compile this information, let me know at the end during the Q&A, and I would be happy to share it. We'll talk a little bit about, but like the research in this particular arena is pretty lacking. So finding resources, I'm happy to share with that. So anyway, let's get started on like the meat and potatoes of our conversation here. So I want to start by posing a question. And that question is, why is it important to talk about relationships, dating, and sex when it comes to people with disabilities? So it's important to talk about those things for a plethora of reasons, right? But I want to start with four main reasons for the focus of today's conversation. So one is that healthy relationships are an important aspect of human life for everyone. Two, it's important to break down stereotypes and talk more about what relationships. Three, give people the tools they need to understand consent because a lot of us have not had that conversation. And four, empower people who wish to pursue relationships and dating with the hope of normalizing relationships and dating. So I want to really quickly, real quick, just point out the illustration that I've used in this slide. It's an artist. Her name is Vonda Kovacs. She uses art and sketches and illustrations like this as a platform to share about her experience in the dating and relationship realm as a person with a disability. This one says, I want to need love, sex, and support, empowerment, and sex education. It's really just a call for inclusive sex ed and a call for all of us to understand that those are basic human needs and they're not specific to any one person or any one population of people. So let's start with healthy relationships. So have you ever heard the phrase that humans are social creatures? I say that all the time, and it's so true on so many levels. We all have a social battery that needs to be charged and sometimes replaced altogether. But the need for social connection is a biological one. We're all kind of biologically driven to crave the company of others in some capacity. Not to say that every single person desires a romantic relationship, because it's true that some people truly do not. But we all have this almost primal urge to be connected to other people in some way, in some capacity. Research shows time and time again the importance of social connection to overall health and wellness. Social connections, we know, promote a sense of belonging and contribute to better physical and mental health. It decreases anxiety and depression. And healthy relationships are reciprocal and create a system of support where all parties feel involved, all parties feel supported and loved and cared for. And that could be through emotional support or whether it's a more physical or tangible source of support. The second reason why it's important to talk about relationships and dating is because of the need to break down stereotypes and hopefully cut down barriers that prevent people from exploring relationships and dating. Harmful assumptions about folks with disabilities inhibit people from achieving their goals all the time, even by and maybe especially by people who are their loved ones, like parents, caregivers, other people that are supposed to support them in achieving their goals. And it's often at a place of love and a hope that we can protect our loved ones. So in the same article that I found the artwork for the previous slide by Vonda, I found a really powerful quote about stereotypes that I wanted to share. So let me pull my note up really quick so that I can get it exactly right. Stereotypes and prejudices can stop young people from meeting many great people, some of whom could be their future partner, just because culture doesn't have that dimension of tolerance and understanding of difference. For example, toward people with disabilities. The article that I got that from was written by a disabled woman who experienced exactly those kinds of stereotypes and prejudices. And so she's openly shared her experience with dating and relationships. So I thought that was a really powerful way to talk about the stereotypes that people face and how it's really inspired and, implied by an ableist world that, it's unfortunate, but we do operate in an inherently ableist world, and that contributes to harmful assumptions made about people and what they need, what they want, what they're capable even of. So in the next slide, we're going to play a little game of myth busting. So let's look at some of the stereotypes that people face and kind of debunk those myths. So the first one here, under in the left column, I have societal views about individuals with disabilities. In the right column, the lived experience and what we know is actually true. So on the left side, the first one, individuals with disabilities do not want romantic partners. That is false. While every single person may not desire a romantic partner, regardless of disability, most people do desire some sort of romantic partner. So we found a study, I think it was, yeah, from 2020, and it was about youth, so ages 16 to 20 years old, and all of the participants had some form of intellectual developmental disability. So in the study, when asked, 85% of respondents said that they did desire a romantic relationship. Only 35% of those respondents were currently in a relationship, but 85% said that they desired a romantic relationship. In another article, several articles I found by Dr. Rhoda Olkin. She's a researcher, professor, clinical psychologist, a mother, a spouse, and a person with lived experience with disability. One of her articles, and again in a textbook that she wrote, which I have on my desk currently, she said that people with disabilities were often raised as if they are asexual, not that they actually are. And that really stuck with me. And that kind of like inspired the rest of the conversation today was that we as a society and we as caregivers and parents and partners and loved ones are making assumptions that are very harmful to the progress of other people. So moving on, another myth is that individual with disabilities only want to date other people with disabilities. Again, that is false. Even though disability can create a shared experience and a point of bonding for people, it doesn't mean that it should be the only binding factor when you choose a partner. Everyone should and has the autonomy to choose a partner for shared interests, love, and support, not just because you have one similar interest. I could not find statistics, and I would love to have found some. Maybe that's an idea for a future study for anyone listening who does research about what percentage of relationships between folks with disabilities are actually with other people with disabilities and people with people who are non-disabled. But the idea that people only want to be with people who are exactly like them or have some sort of really strong defining combining factor is very interesting to me. And the list goes on and on, all the myths, like there's so many. But I think it is important. Last myth that I wanted to touch on was that partners of disability, people with disabilities are the sole caregiver in the relationship. And as we've already kind of talked about, the essence of a healthy relationship is reciprocal support. So it's really misguided and misunderstood that people with disabilities would be the only recipient of love and support, and when in fact that everyone has something to contribute in a relationship. And while couples may face unique circumstances, individuals with disabilities are more than capable of offering love and support, even if that support looks a little bit different than what they're receiving. All right. When we talk about relationships and dating, we also have to talk about sex and sexuality. And that's a topic that's very rarely breached in disability research, literature, and education. And none of us received the best sexual education in the world when we were in school. But most people with disabilities are completely left out of the conversation, especially those in special education classrooms. There's just a general lack of inclusive special ed and sex ed, which falls into the assumption that people with disabilities are not interested or not capable or even allowed to be sexual beings. And this contributes to a much higher rate of sexual assault. People with disabilities are about 3 times or more as likely than non-disabled peers to experience sexual assault in their lifetime. And there's a higher lifetime prevalence rate of both sexual violence and domestic violence in general than non-disabled peers. But talking about relationships, dating, and sex helps people give people the tools they need to understand and provide the language and context to understand what's okay for their body, what's not okay for their body, and what they might wish to pursue in terms of relationships and dating and sex. And this understanding and autonomy over our own bodies helps prevent abuse, and it also gives people the language and context to report abuse if it happens, and to understand that it's reportable and that their experience is valid and worthy of experience, like talking about the experience when they want to. So I wanted to just share a little bit of resources because like that, like I said, there are not a ton, but I did find some really cool resources that I'd like to share. So formal sex education is lacking, but there are some places online, especially that exist around teaching inclusive sex education, especially for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So a couple of the ones that I've found and used and have really liked are Elevate Us. and tell it like it is. And both of those platforms have inclusive curriculums that anybody can use when they want to learn more about exploring sexuality and dating. But there's also tools on both of those websites that are specific to people, like parents, caregivers, teachers, friends, other folks who want to talk to loved ones about sex and sexuality. So I would encourage y'all to check those out. They have webinars that you can attend. They have online curriculum training. They have handouts and resources. So very cool places to check out that. But I also wanted to include the phone number and information for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you or someone that you know is experiencing domestic violence, resources are available to you. So start by checking out their website, or you can call the hotline for help. All right. And then not only does talking about relationships and dating give people the tools and the power to say no, we also want to empower people to say yes. And talking about it, we're normalizing relationships, we're normalizing dating and sex for people with disabilities, and we're providing a safe space for people to explore what they want. Conversations can be backed up by representation in the media. So we all know that there is a lack of TV shows and movies that accurately and unproblematically represent people with disabilities in relationships, especially. But there are some, and is growing. So back in 2020, there was a petition passed around by actors. I think there were like 72 different high-level actors that signed the petition. They're pushing for more disability representation in media. And so hopefully we can see more positive representation moving forward. It's important that people see themselves represented in a positive way, because that can contribute to feeling empowered, to pursue that for themselves. And the last little bit, I just wanted to give some little takeaways. I think we were supposed to have five. I only included, I'm sorry, is there a comment?
I think someone had inadvertently unmuted.
Okay. Just trying to keep an eye out if someone, I have it on speaker view, so if anybody, says anything, it'll pop up. But anyway, I think we were supposed to have five, but I really just put four main categories. Just some guidance on supporting loved ones who are interested in dating and relationships and sex. So the first thing is to be open and to provide a safe space with an open mind to encourage conversations. Nobody wants to approach someone who they feel like is going to be really closed-minded and discouraging, when they have a big topic to talk about, because this can be a really sensitive subject for everyone, especially in those like transition years into adulthood, but especially for populations of people who have been told their whole lives that this is not for you. So just be open and encouraging for people. Give clear guidance and be very clear about your messaging. So be very clear about where you stand, about being open-minded, being supportive, and be sure to talk openly about choice, autonomy, about consent, safety. Give the recommendation for sexual education is to use the correct language, not like some fun words to talk about body parts when you're talking about bodies and you're talking about topics that are sensitive, to use the correct language in a very non-emotional way so that it's very normalized and understood what you're talking about. So it's important to be very clear. The next bit of guidance is to provide resources. So, like I said, I've listed a couple of resources. There are other things, other platforms online that you can find. There are books, there are videos, there are easy to understand materials out there. There are also people who are willing to talk to people about sex, about relationships, about dating. I'm one of them. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it anytime. I feel very passionately that everyone should be given the knowledge and understanding that they need to pursue relationships if that's what they choose to do. And then the last one is again back to the whole being open thing, but to not only be open, but to be encouraging. Dating is hard for everyone. I'm married now, but I remember the days of dating, and it's really tricky. It's tricky terrain out there. It's hard to navigate. So being encouraging, being patient with your loved one as they're navigating this tricky terrain and learning about dating and relationships and sex, it's important to meet people where they are and support them in their journey. And I think that's all I have for today. Again, sorry for the rude interruption. Hopefully, hopefully it does not happen again. I'm not even sure how long that was, but I'm open to any and all questions at this point.
Thank you, Rachel. We have a question from Julie. And Julie asks, I would like to ask for guidance on how to talk to people who have state guardians.
And I can elaborate on that if need be. I'm not showing my face because I'm eating and nobody wants to see that. But we have a lot of waiver participants who have state guardians who just blatantly tell us that their clients are not allowed to have sex, they're not allowed to have relationships. So what would be your all's guidance on how to approach that to let them know that is their right and that I mean as a human being, like any suggestions?
I think you put the nail on the head right there just by saying like it's a fundamental need to want relationships and it's okay. And you can maybe even approach it from a place of like, it's a really important thing to support people in so that they know what they're doing going into it. So maybe that's like everything that we talked about today, maybe that's kind of how you have the conversation. Because state guardians do have a lot of power in what people are allowed to say and do, but they also can't prevent people from having wants and wishes and desires and goals to achieve. So maybe that's how you approach it is just talking about like it is such a fundamental need. And if you're worried about, a lot of people are worried about safety, right? So if you talk about like if we're giving people the tools that they need, it can help them be more safe and supported in their journey. Does that answer your question or help a little bit?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
We do not have any other questions or comments in the chat at this moment, Rachel.
Okay. Well, I have my email address on the screen. Like I said before, if anybody's interested in learning more about the resources that I used, to like talk through some of these things, I have a ton of resources. I have like a 5-page document of just like links to articles. If anybody is interested in that, feel free to shoot me an email. Or if you have any questions about any of this, shoot me an email and I'd be happy to talk more about it.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you all.
Our next presenter is Cody Clark. Cody, the floor is yours.
Hello, Kentucky Land. My name is Cody Clark, and as successful as a lot of y'all have known me to be as a whole, from running my own business as a magician and advocate to being in this very apartment for a year, there's been one area of my life, and that is dating, that has been a consistent Achilles heel for me for the past 2 decades. And I think a lot of that is for the reasons Rachel has mentioned. Due to all of the factors that she mentioned, among other factors, I found it to be harder than usual to gain the knowledge of how to date, as well as how to apply that knowledge in a way that actually works for me. But fortunately, it's not all doom and gloom with my dating story. A lot of it is, but there is a modern dating development that has bridged a lot of the gaps for me. That's taken me from dating being a once in the blue moon thing for me to at least having a few dates and prospects a year. Today, during my time, I would like to share how online dating apps have allowed me to have a dating life after all, and how they can potentially be a good part of yours or the people you care for with a disabilities dating toolkit. I will start by giving an overview of the dating app scene and what it's all about, who the players are, the basics of how they work. Then I will go in depth on how to use them properly and successfully before ending with the pros and cons of dating apps. That way, by the time you all leave today's presentation, you will know whether or not dating apps are a good fit, and if so, how to get to swiping. Speaking of, y'all up for swiping right on the rest of this talk? I know Rachel is. Both Rachels are actually.
We are.
We will start then with the overview of dating apps. Most of y'all probably know them by now, but in case you don't, they are typically best used on smartphones, and they are essentially a directory of profiles of people within the radius that you mentioned that are open to dating. There are the big three dating apps. You could consider it big four if you're part of the LGBTQ community. And there's also a bunch of smaller, more niche dating apps. Starting with the big three/four, the big three for anybody, no matter their sexual orientation, their dating intentions. The big three that can be used by everyone are Bumble, Tinder, and Hinge. Then the fourth one is specifically aimed at the LGBTQ community, but is as big of a player in that community as the rest are for everyone more broadly, and that is Grindr. The reason I suggest starting with these four, these have been around since dating apps first became a thing, so therefore culture is familiar with them. They have a big user base, and whether you're in Louisville or Lexington, like most of us are, or New York City and everywhere in between, anytime you use them, there will be a decent amount of people on those apps for you to interact with. And they all work similarly, even if they are technically slightly different in their specialties. With that said, you can get as niche as you want on dating apps. You have dating apps for about any sexual orientation. You have dating apps for people who want relationships only, as well as people who want to hook up, have casual sex. You have dating apps for every religious group. And in the disability world, the big one that's aimed for us that I know about is Hickey, and that is for people who are neurodivergent identifying. And the specificity can be a good thing, since in theory with dating, you only need to succeed once. But at the same time, the user bases on all of these are way, way smaller than the big four that I've already mentioned. So it will sometimes only take an hour for you to swipe through everyone who is obviously a real profile. And you can kind of tell the people who put time into their profiles versus the ones that are bots or scammers where it's just one picture, just very generic info. You see more real people on the big four and less real people on the more niche apps. But both can be a healthy part of your dating profile life. And I encourage you to use as many as you feel comfortable managing in a day. The basic steps for all of them work the same. The user creates the profile featuring pictures and prompts, which reveal basic info about you. And then when you're done with your profile, you spend time on the app looking at other users' profiles, swiping left if you don't think you're compatible, and swiping right if you do think you're compatible. And then if two people swipe right on each other, just like one of my magic tricks, a match and a separate private message thread appears, and you can use that message thread to decide whether or not you want to go on a date or whether or not you all are a good fit. Those are the basics. Best practices for using apps as a whole. The most important thing is to take your profile seriously. I'd say this is more important than anything else because this is how people decide whether or not they're going to swipe on you. If all they see is one picture and hardly any prompts filled out, you're not giving people much to go on. Where on the other hand, if you have a ton of pictures and you have thoughtful things in your prompts, you give people a sense of whether you're right for them, and an opening line shall that match message thread open up. What you do on your profile is you fill out information that reflects who you are as a person, what you want out of your life, what you want out of a partner, why you want to date. Use your profile to filter who matches with you. Also, with pictures, don't just do one. No need to do a ton, but about 5 or 6, and that are a variety. You want a full body shot, so there's no surprises on the first date. You want a selfie or a headshot if you're someone like me whose career gives you headshots already. Pictures with friends are important because people like to know someone has friends. And pictures of you doing your favorite activities so people sense you have a well-rounded life. But along with the profile, on the back end, you can filter who you see based on geographic radius, based on dating intention, based on whether you do or don't want kids, even based on height, because apparently that matters. Use both because dating is a lot like marketing. You want to keep the wrong people out as much as you keep the right people in. If you swipe on everyone, you're going to be on there all day and you're going to disappoint some people who are for sure not compatible with you. So use your profile seriously and with the intent to filter your results. And also, if you have friends who are dating savvy, neurotypical, or neurodivergent, have them review your profiles. Often that makes a big difference in your success. Also, most apps have paid options. Most apps, you can use them a lot for free. Some will try to get you to pay subscriptions that can be anywhere from day by day to even lifetime subscriptions and everything in between. Really, the big difference is the swiping limits are removed. You can get more niche with your filters. And supposedly the algorithm turns more favorable to you and gives you people who are slightly more favorable to you. It depends on the app, but the big three and four, those you can get very far for free every day. And also, it's generally recommended you only spend 10 minutes on the apps a day anyway. So you can get very far by not paying. You might want to pay if you want to get results quickly. And I'll also say in Louisville/Lexington, it generally you need to pay no more than a week to swipe on everyone. So if you pay, only do it because you want results quickly and you don't need longer than a week because of the population of our area as a whole. It's so big, small that yes, you have stuff to play with. But if you pay to remove those limits, you can swipe through all of Louisville and all of Lexington in a week. So pretty much leave it up to your budgeting, leave it up to your desires, but it is not at all required to pay for the apps. When you're on the apps, be open to anybody, but careful with swiping. And how do you strike that balance? Be firm on your deal breakers. What would make someone a no-go for you to date versus your nice to haves but can adjust. Like for me, I'm a dog person, but I could live with cats as long as the cat's not brought around my allergic dad. Whereas someone who would not support my self-employment career as a magician, that would be a deal breaker. If you see someone who's 75% of what we call green flags, but yet there's a few of those nice to haves that are not there, still swipe right. But if you see a single deal breaker, swipe left. And also read their profile too. Many, especially neurotypical people, just swipe, swipe, swipe and deal with the results later. I do not recommend that because that is how feelings get hurt, because people get excited about a match only to find that you've got nothing in common with them. But let's assume a best case scenario, you got a match. Yay for you. Shall you match? The dating app did its job. Dating apps are not relationship guarantee apps. They are connection apps. Use that message thread to get to know someone and see if you hit it off. And be mindful that whether or not you hit it off, that's not the fault of the app. That is just the dynamics between you two. Again, the app did its job by connecting with you all. Use the message thread to see if y'all hit it off. I recommend the cadence of a new friend. Fun, playful, witty. Don't be an interviewer. That's been my biggest mistake I've had to learn is treating it like an interview. Most people find interviews boring unless you're dealing with the press like I am when I get interviewed. So show your fun side, but be respectful. For most people, granted not all, but 99.9% of people leave the sex jokes until like fifth date maybe. Do not share them right away on the apps, and definitely don't, like some people still do, send pictures of yourself on the apps. Most people do not appreciate either. Instead, treat it like more of a new friend connection. And also be respectful of the individual personality types. Some people will be like, let's get off the app and go straight to the date. Some will want a monthly conversation before the date, and others are somewhere in between. You will get further if you sense that quickly from the other person and proceed accordingly. Meet them in the middle. Like if they violate a deal breaker, call things off. But if they're like, I got to get to know you first, respect that. Or if they're like, let's go on the date now, I don't like small talk, as long as you're okay with that, feel free to proceed at that speed. And again, do your best, but also be open to any outcome. Now, I will end and then take Q&A with the pros and cons of using dating apps. I wouldn't have chosen to speak on this if I didn't feel there were more pros than cons. The biggest pro for me and a lot of us, especially who are neurodivergent, is dating apps remove a lot of the social rules that keep us from approaching people. It is so hard for me to know whether I'm being flirted with or whether it's socially acceptable for me to approach someone, and I've missed many opportunities as a result. But on a dating app, everyone knows and agrees about why they're on the app, at least ideally. So you do not need to decipher subtext or flirting because they're on the app due to wanting relationships of some sort. That has removed more barriers for me than anything, that one aspect. But also, there are reasons why the new in person dating styles are not ideal for people. For most of us in here, or most people with disabilities, it's more the social nuances, social anxiety, the traumas from bad dating experiences, that aspect of in person dating. For me, it's more so because I travel so much. I'm often out of town during the new singles game nights that are popping up as an alternative to dating apps. What dating apps allow me to do, especially Hinge. Hinge keeps you in your hometown no matter where you are. Bumble and Tinder, you have to pay for that privilege. But dating apps allow me to still meet new people from my area even when I'm on the road. And that has made dating more accessible to me than it would have been otherwise, in spite of me being self employed. There's also less pressure in a sense because in person dating, you kind of have the pressure to go from 0 to 100 immediately. But on a dating app, you can rigorously vet someone from a safe place that is not your personal cell number before you decide how to proceed. So that way, worst case scenario, you on match, you block them from the app, and ideally, you are not contacted by them again. But best case, you can take all the time you need, and only when he senses a good fit, then you go on the date and share the personal info. And then last, you get a lot of practice having conversations. I've went from no dating to at least a few dates a year because of these apps, and I've only had one true relationship out of it and one situationship, which is kind of that in between purgatory of dating. And I can explain more about that in the Q&A if you want to know more about what that slang and what that context entails. Although I've only had two true successes in the dating sense, I've been on a lot of dates, got to learn from the earlier ones, and it's helped me do better with these more recent ones. But there are cons to dating apps too. People complain about them, rightfully so, for many good reasons. Most foremost being, I mentioned the profile is important. The profile is based on looks and is based on status because the personal context is removed from it. So, looks and social status can be overvalued on a dating app because they don't have your personality to go on. There's also the illusion of options. People are less tolerant of any sort of red flags, any sort of incompatibilities, because in theory, the next best match could be right next door. So you kind of unfortunately have to censor yourself a little more than you would in an in person dating context because people theoretically can match with someone slightly better. Then, having a disability on a dating app has its own specific cons. Yes, you meet fellow neurodivergents sometimes. Yes, there are people who are very cool with it, but many are not. When I tried being honest about my autism on my profile, I'd hardly get matches. Now I have a strategy where I mention it in the message thread. Some were cool with it there, but I went on a Zoom date once where someone pulled, just like Rachel Lantern mentioned, the whole, oh, this means I'm going to be your caregiver card. That is something you get a lot after a first date or two when you open up about your disability diagnosis. Oh, I didn't sign up for that. And on the other end, a new trend is the other extreme, especially among women with autism and other neurodivergences, is this trend of fetishizing autism and neurodivergence to where they find our diagnosis is sexy for the wrong reasons. Both of those extremes are things you will have to encounter when dating with a disability on a dating app. Dating apps also require a lot of patience. Kind of like me trying to get people to buy my shows and talks. There's times where it's like match, 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 bang, bang, bang. Other times where it's a long time in between matches. And the rejection is more illustrated, where with in person dating, someone says no, okay, see you later. Where if no one matches you on an app for a while, that is highly illustrated rejection. And I can see why people really get their feelings hurt when they go through those periods. Also, the problems of dating apps have always existed with all forms of dating, especially in your late 20s and early 30s, is the longer your dating career is, the more people you see who have insecure attachment styles that lead to them being on apps but having emotional issues that prevent the relationship at the end of the day. People think that's just a dating app problem, but that's always been a dating problem for people, especially in my age range. And then last, customer service is indeed pretty much non existent. They try to farm that out to AI bots, but whether it's because someone is genuinely stalking you as a result of an app, or like me on Bumble, you get locked out of your profile and they assume you're a stalker even though you just got locked out. No matter what, they pretty much won't help you. So, hope you don't have a customer service issue. But with that said, there are still many elements of dating that are a struggle for me. But what I've found is dating apps have helped me go from sitting on the sidelines, from not knowing if I could ever find the person that would value me for who I really am, that would put value on this blank check, to being a tool that would help me aim in a good direction and find rich and full connections. Thank you, Cassie. Thank you, Milton. Thank you, Allison and Walt. I encourage you all to, whether you have a disability or you're helping people with disabilities date and consider dating apps, consider the basics, apply best practices, and weigh the pros and cons to decide whether dating apps can be a good part of your toolkit. Feel free to facilitate the questions wall, because I see there have been a few.
Thank you, Cody. We do have a comment from Katie in the chat. Katie says, "Love this, Cody. Yes, this really resonates with me because online dating is actually how I met my fiance."
That's becoming more common of a story. That's how my friends and landlords met. That's how both my one relationship in my life and my situationship, both of them were dating apps. A lot of people crap on dating apps, but people do they do legit change people's lives in the best when they work at their best.
Yeah, they,
Jonathan, oh,
sorry, Walt.
go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to echo Cody's sentiment. Yes, they really do. I've had my camera off because I have been to the doctor this morning and I'm kind of a mess today. But I just wanted to jump on really quick and share my story. Maybe I can share my screen. Hold on. Oh, can I share my screen real quick? I was just going to show a picture of me and him.
Sure.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah. Okay, is it showing up?
Not quite yet, Katie.
Then while she's pulling that out, I'll echo Amy Schlosser's comment, and apologies if I messed up your last name, that there are, along in the discussion of hyper-specific apps, apps designed for individuals who are more prone to exploitation by only allowing vetted individuals on the app. All apps vet to an extent. At least the big three or four will make you take a selfie on the spot. Like my headshot wouldn't do. I had to take a selfie on the spot. Like they won't delete people who don't do that, but you will see blue check marks by people who do. And I do like the idea of apps which are extra safe. And I'll also say that is a bit of a flaw of the minor players. I don't think Hickey has any verification. And there were good people on Hickey, but there are a lot of fake profiles. Also probably because a lot of the people of malicious intent feel like that's a good place to find people who they can mess with.
We have a comment from Jonathan. Jonathan says, "One safety precaution from my past days as a cop, don't have children in any of the photos you post on dating sites. Predators do unfortunately look for such profiles." And
Very
we
true. If you do have children, don't put, or even if they're more like cousins rather than children. Like, I know some people advise, yes, especially for men, that it looks good for you to have kids in your pictures, but I'd say do pets instead, because pets have the same effect without putting your family in harm's way.
we have August has a raised hand. August?
You are on mute, August.
I'm so sorry. Hi, I'm August Romeo. I'm currently a lead trainee at Stony Brook University. And I just wanted to say that was a great presentation, Cody. Like everything I could definitely relate to as a assigned female at birth. I have been used for in the sense with my autism and predatory. Like so, it's very um, you know it's a thing to be aware of that I wasn't aware of, and I wish I had this like a couple years ago to listen to. Um, and also the rejection on apps is also very hard because if you don't get um like results after a while, you're kind of like, hey, why is this happening? So I also wanted to say that what you said was spot on. So I thank you for your presentation and it was great.
I'm
So
glad you
thanks.
feel it was relevant to
Yeah.
August. It was August, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Glad you feel it was relevant. I will add that nothing really taught me more about how the public can perceive disability at its worst than dating apps. Like,
Yeah.
I found good people, but I also had that one Zoom date that as soon as first I mentioned my autism, that was one strike. Then I mentioned I'm not sure about kids. Who here's seen the Family Guy episode where Quagmire lays into Brian? That was the end of the date, all because I mentioned those two things.
Oh
So
no.
I've had my share of bad experiences too. Dating apps have given me great experiences, but they've also taught me how bad stereotypes can truly be.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for bringing awareness to this, Cody, and I appreciate you.
Th-
Anytime.
Thank you, August.
Yeah.
August. Katie, you have unmuted.
Okay. Yeah, let me try. I'm trying to share this really quick. See if I can. Y'all see it now?
Yes, we can, Katie.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. My screensaver is me and my little brothers, but this is me and Zach, and we've been together for going on, well, it'll be 6 years in February, and we just got engaged last February. So we're coming up on almost a year of engagement, and this was our engagement party back in this past March, and it was really fun. Let me see if I can go back to these were all of our pictures. But it was really fun, and this was our cake and everything. We met online, just like uh, this entire seminar has been about. And he's been like the first person that I've met that that saw past the disability, that was able to like see me for the person I am, not, my shortcomings, not my thing that makes me different. So it's really been special to me to have him in my life. And he's done so much. Like, he'll take me fishing with him. He loads up my walker. So I'll use a wheelchair for long distances, but sometimes I'll use a walker. And so like he'll load that up in the car. He'll do, whatever I need him to do. And I'm just very blessed to have him. And his birthday is actually Saturday. So I get to celebrate him on Saturday. And I'm really excited about that. So I'm gonna quit
You
share.
all look, I can tell, I can see the love in these pictures.
Thank you. Um, I'm gonna quit sharing that if I can. Okay. All right. Am I back now? Thank you
You,
all.
thank you for sharing that, Katie.
Yeah, of course. We've had our obviously our fair share of differences. And a lot of that is just like a difference in how we grew up and things. But and there's been challenges and stuff like that, but that's normal. That's relationships that you're gonna have that. But I would just encourage anybody on this meeting to just put yourself out there and be confident, be you, um, be yourself, and your person will find you and they'll love you for all of it because mine does. So I'm
And
very blessed.
also, a good antidote to rejection. Yes, it sucks, but my friend Buddy August, he's a fellow magician. He told me you only need to succeed once.
Yep, exactly.
Hey,
Hmm.
we have thank you, Katie. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you for letting me share.
You're welcome. Jonathan in the chat has a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Walt. Just the one thing I want to say is recently I became part of and we launched, and I'm now the president of the Disabled Martial Artists Alliance. And so, for a number of things, I want to write for that website that goes with that, that's transitioning between what used to be known as the Adaptive Martial Artists Association. Um, One of the things I've been doing is looking up some of the crime stats and things like that. So I don't mean to be real negative here, but
Yeah.
in the positive sense, when you go on a date, and this is really good advice for anyone, let somebody you trust and know that you're going on this date, know who you're going with, like what their online dating site, profile name is, and all those sorts of things, and let them know when you expect to be back. And part of the reason I say that is across the board, depending on the disability, depending on the gender and sex. People with disabilities are victimized in criminal ways 3 to 12 times the rest of the like neurotypical population, for example. So, it's just something worth taking those precautions and being safe and letting somebody know who you're going to see and when you expect to be back.
Yes, and on that note, since that advice is good for everyone, but from what every date's told me, every date, since I mostly date women, is that it's standard practice among all women pretty much. And also another thing for male identifying daters to keep in mind is how different the dating experience is for women. That if you learn a bit about that, gain some empathy going into a date, that alone will increase your chances of success. You understanding how much more dangerous people who identify as women feel on dates compared to men. Like I've heard it said, men have to worry about rejection, women sometimes have to worry about violence.
But thank you, Cody, and thank you for leading this discussion of online dating. We appreciate it. Let's take a 5 minute break. We've reached the midpoint of our seminar. Let's take a 5 minute break. And so please come back at the top of the hour. Welcome back to this HDI seminar. Our next presenter for the second half of this HDI seminar is Micah. Micah, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Everybody, sorry, I'm still catching my breath. I came back up the stairs with a quickness and I shouldn't have done that.
Let's see.
All right, can everybody see
Oh,
my
there we
screen?
go.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Micah P. Sorkia. I use they, them pronouns.
We can see it.
Thank you. And just a short visual description of myself. I am a white non-binary person wearing rainbow glasses, with short brown hair, wearing a dark sweatshirt, sitting in my home office. Um, and I must be honest with you, I'm a little bit nervous. I had a hard time preparing for this presentation. I started thinking that I was just going to come and tell you my story when it comes to relationships and love and family. And I'm still going to do some of that. But I want to focus more on what I've learned. Um, because I am both the survivor of relationship violence for some of the reasons that Rachel and Cody have already touched on, but I'm also now uh, part of a very happy and successful, almost 12-year relationship. And we just welcomed a little boy earlier this year. Um, so I want to start, if you know me, or if you've ever heard me talk before, you know that I have a little bit of a performing arts background and I need to set the stage a little bit. So I work in positive psychology. Um, and according to positive psychology, Rachel already spoke really eloquently to some of this, but love is for everyone. Um, all people, these are some of the core tenets of positive psychology. All people want to be liked and to enjoy life and to enjoy it with other people. Um, all people have both the need and the capacity for well-being, for being a loving partner, and for receiving love and care from other people. Um, and all people have character strengths, not just weaknesses, not just challenges or diagnoses, not just vulnerabilities. All people have character strengths and have things to offer. And just as Rachel said, people are social creatures, and we need relationships. And human needs tend to find a way, even when it's less than ideal, even when we don't know what they're doing, what we're doing. Cody spoke to some of the perils of being an assigned female at birth, disabled person. And because I was raised without good images or good models or expectations of what a loving relationship could look like for me later on, um, when I experienced a very difficult transition to high school from a smaller school that was able to support me, give me resources, a place where I had friends and community, um, I very quickly got into a relationship with the first person who paid attention to me. Um, and I got stuck there for a very, very long time. Um, that relationship became violent and unsafe. I felt a lot of shame. And just as Rachel talked about, I didn't have anybody that I felt I could go to, that I could talk to, um, in my life about that for a long time. Um, and so a big lesson that I'd like you to take away, especially if you are a non-disabled person who loves and supports us, if you have the desire to be in a loving relationship, you have the ability to be in a loving relationship. If you have the ability to ask a question or demonstrate curiosity or awareness of your body or sexuality, then by golly, you are old enough and capable enough to have a conversation about it and what it means to navigate options, to safely explore, experience, and learn. Just like Rachel talked about, both what you don't want, don't like, and want to absolutely say no to, and how to say no, and what you do like. Because I had no frame of reference for for most of my teenage years, frankly. Um, and if you are seeing expressions of sexuality or romantic interest or desire that are causing you and your family some challenges, you're not seeing a behavior. You're not seeing a diagnosis-based problem. You are seeing the expression of an unmet need. And until you are willing to meet that honestly and respectfully head on, you'll keep seeing it in the form that you're struggling with. And your loved one will keep struggling. Um, and that's what you don't want to happen. And fortunately, positive psychology gives us a framework for preventing it. So another important point that both of my co-panelists have made today are that love looks different for everybody. Wellness looks different for everybody, irrespective of disability, irrespective of any kind of identity that you have. we can't presume to know what other people truly need from love or relationships with other people. But luckily, as I've said, positive psychology gives us a framework that we can all use. It might look different, but these 5 things are things that we all need in our life to be connected and well. So there is an extra letter left off, but this is the core framework, and I want you to notice what's at the center. It's relationships. That's not just because Martin Seligman, the positive psychologist, needed to spell something. It's there for a reason. And that reason is that relationships are both the foundation and the gateway to every other part of the good life, every other piece of this framework. Think about it. Positive emotion, whether it's good news or a laugh or a funny video, that's better shared with another person, isn't it? Meaning, that's all about being connected to a sense of something bigger than just yourself. And for a lot of people, that's community, that's your family, that's your faith, all of which bring us into direct contact with other people. So there is so much lip service given to keeping us safe, that is the number one thing that helps us to stay well as people with disabilities. But it's relationships. Love and life, I would argue, are all about belonging. So these are my people. Something that I want you to notice. One of these photos is a lot older. One of these is a little bit older. Every single person in this picture has multiple disabilities. Almost every single person in both of these pictures is queer, and almost every single person in both of these pictures is in a loving relationship. The best relationships, wherever you find them, they're rooted in friendship and mutual respect. Um, Manny, my partner, and I didn't even mean to fall in love with him. I had just gotten out of that horrible relationship, and I had spent about a summer doing the apps, having some really bad experiences. Cody talked about that. Um, and then someone that I knew from high school, Manny, messaged me on another app, Twitter. We had not talked we went to high school together, had very few classes together, hadn't talked in a long time, um, but are both on the spectrum, and he found it easier to approach me online. I had made a joke and he responded. Um, and we just started hanging out again. I fell in love with my partner um, because he came to the board game nights that my friends had. Um, and we played games together. I fell in love with him taking turns playing each other our favorite songs and talking about why we liked it. Um, or like the ways that it made us feel. Um, when we weren't when we were really struggling to communicate, he showed me the movie Adam, uh, which is a movie about an autistic man looking for love. And he really related to it and it helped us understand each other. Um, and so I think like one big thing that I want to encourage folks with disabilities is we're all, it's, how do I say this? We all want love, we all want romance, but surround yourself with good friends because in the end, it was these people who gave me what I needed to get out of a bad situation. And it was also these people who helped me bring about the best situation I've ever been in my life. Um, and that's this, my partner. Um, like I said, I was having some trouble preparing for this talk. Um, I talk a lot about my lived experience, but this feels really vulnerable and very personal to me. And relationships are a two-way street. So when I was struggling, I did what I always do, and I turned to my partner. I asked him, what do you think? What do people really need to know from us as two people with disabilities who have found a way to make this work. Um, and he said four things. He said friendship, just like I've told you. Um, we both really enjoyed watching Love on the Spectrum, but agreed that one reason that maybe they didn't have more successful couples is they were putting autistic people in really neurotypical situations. We fell in love in a really autistic way, and it's because we became friends first. Then he said, the most important thing is you be yourself to find love, to find your people. Be as authentic as you can. Because just like Cody said, that is going to help you keep the wrong people out and the right people in. But when you find that love, when you find that person, just like Kate, I want to say it was Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but as Katie said, no relationship is without struggle. No relationship is without disagreement or differences. So be ready to become the best version of yourself to keep
Absolutely.
love. Be ready to compromise. Be ready to accept your partner in their differences, in their shortcomings. This is not saying let somebody treat you bad. This is not saying let somebody be mean to you, but it is saying that I have learned no matter how many times I beg, man, I need to close the shower curtain, he ain't gonna do it. So I had to take an expo marker and write right above the faucet so he sees it before he turns it off to please close the shower curtain. Smiley face. It's all about acceptance and compromise. The best relationships allow us to be ourselves in our fullest, but they also encourage us and challenge us to grow and to become the best versions of ourselves. And lastly, he wanted me to share that it may not always be perfect or 100% equal. You're going to have days where it is truly 50-50 and you feel like the best power couple in the world and you're killing it. And other days, it's going to be 80-20, and one of you is going to have just had a meltdown, and the other one is really going to have to step up and help you find a break, help you find safety, help you get grounded again. And that's what it is to love and to be loved. Um, it means taking good care. It means showing up for each other. And it means being willing to grow with people through hard times. And I just want to leave you with a couple of quotes. The first is that love and belonging are the needs of all adults and children. We are hardwired for connection. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. The absence of love, belonging, and connection always leads to suffering. And as has definitely been the case in my life and in our story, healthy relationships are an agent of change and an agent of healing and an agent of growth. The more healthy relationships a person has, the more likely they will be able to recover from adversity and to thrive. Relationships are the agents of change, and the most powerful therapy is human love. And every single person who breathes and who walks, rolls, or dances across this earth deserves to enjoy it in whatever form resonates with them. Um, I don't know how much time it's been, but I'm happy to take questions.
Comments or questions from Micah? We we do have a comment from Cassie in the chat. Your voice is important, and I'm thankful you're sharing, Micah. August says, love seeing that. Quincy says, love this. Cody says, yes, sliding in the DMS has its own rules, but is a valid strategy. Stacy says, all I see is love, fun, and happiness in those pictures. Ashley says, thank you, Micah. Cody has a comment, having went to high school with Micah and witnessing both situations as a fellow student, I'm so happy for this glow up. Ashley in the chat commented, your little boy is precious, Micah. Happiness looks good on you. Katie says, yes, absolutely. Becky commented, beautiful and so true. Jonathan commented, great presentation, Micah. Thank you for sharing a bit of your heart with us today. Rachel says, incredible presentation. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story, Micah. Rachel says, thank you for sharing your voice. Melanie says, has anyone had any outside support from family or staff, and what did that look like for you?
We are getting extensive support as new parents. I will say that. Um, there's almost always someone in the house with us to help us make sure that we do things like eat um, right now. And although we do get plenty of time alone as a family, it's obviously a big transition, and transition is quite hard as two autistic people. And so all, pretty much all of our supports are natural. I do see a therapist regularly. That is not a natural support. Um, I couldn't do it without it, though. But most of our supports, all of our supports other than that, are natural. But they are extensive, and I would say it's worth it. I mean, like the adage is true, it takes a village to raise a child, and I think that that is true whether you have a disability or not. I have definitely struggled with this transition, but I think that I don't think that those difficulties are so different from someone without a disability. And I also think that in some ways, being disabled has made it easier because I have already had to accept that I have no control over anything. I don't have control over my baby. I don't have control over our bodies. And I think that's like a really hard lesson to learn as a new parent, and I make my peace with it repeatedly, but it wasn't a surprise to me. I also, for your question, would like to refer you to the Disability and Parenting Center at Brandeis. They do a ton of research around supports that do exist and can be provided to folks that do want to build families as disabled parents.
Thank you, Micah. August has a hand raised. August?
Yes, hi again. It's August. I
Hi.
just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story and congrats on your little angel. It's great to see two autistic parents and you guys in a relationship definitely brings hope. I was wondering like if you guys ever had like a meltdown at the same time and how'd you combat that, if you're willing to share. If not, that's fine. I know it's very personal.
No,
But it's yeah.
that's such a good question. Thank you for asking that. Yes, the answer is yes. Sometimes two autistic people, uh, your needs and your energies align in such a way that it turns into a vicious cycle. Um, and and when that happens, and it took us a very long time to learn this, but we've had to learn um to have a safe word and to literally just go like time out. Like, and even I could be like ugly crying, losing my words in my body. I can still go. And one of us knows, get to another room, get to another room, and we will reconvene. Um, so that I would recommend that. And we always check in with each other afterward and like take care to let the other person know like you were not why that happened. Or if you were, it wasn't you personally. It was like, I begged you to stop eating chips. I went and got my ear defenders and very pointedly put them on in front of you. And you still did not stop eating chips with your mouth open. Um, and so we can move forward and not be mad at each other.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Like I appreciate that. Definitely something I'll be taking with me for future relationships.
I'm glad.
We have a comment in the chat from Young Ju. So beautiful. I can see that you've gained so much insight through your journey, and your sharing is truly inspiring. Irene in the chat says, "Thank you, Micah. Beautiful family." And Stacy says, "Good question, that is." Any other comments or questions or Micah? Jonathan added in the chat, safe words are a great tool in a relationship for all of us, neurotypical or neurodivergent.
True.
Thank you, Micah, for
Thank you all.
sharing your story today and being vulnerable. We appreciate it. Our next presenter is Allison. Allison has a few slides to share, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Allison.
Thank you. Let me try to get these started. Okay, is it in the presentation mode? Can everybody
Yes,
see
it
it?
is.
Great. Okay, I'm Allison Borden. My pronouns are she, her. I am wearing a pink sweater with white trim. I have brown short hair that's pulled back. I'm sitting in a home office with dark brown bookcases with books and some decorations behind me. And I'm just grateful to be here. I'm going to talk about dating and disability through a lens of social revalorization, which I'll talk a little bit about and give you a background on that, but it's going to be very light because it has helped me kind of frame how I understand disability in dating for the person that I support in my life, which is my daughter. Dr. Wolfensberger is the one who kind of framed this theory. The quote here is, to be truly alive is to be seen as fully human. So quickly, it's going to be a very brief and broad overview. It's the key concepts of social revalorization are that we have valued roles in society, and we're recognized and we gain primary. That's one of the primary ways that we gain respect through society is having roles like being an employee, being a parent, being a student, participating in community groups, and this impacts a person's quality of life. And people who hold value roles, we know, have more positive relationships, a sense of belonging, and creates an overall well-being. So SRV focuses on how can we empower individuals and service providers to help them develop the skills and supports they need to take on more valued roles so they can participate more fully in society. The intention for SRV is to combat devaluation and negative perceptions for those with disabilities that result in harm. I want to acknowledge, I know there's some on this call that are way bigger experts in SRV, but I do want to acknowledge that there are people in the human service field and disabled people who will argue, and I do understand this sentiment, that SRV can also be seen as perpetuating the devalued status of people with disabilities by focusing on the disabled person conforming to so-called roles in society. That's a debate I can't get into today. I think it's worthy of having, but I just want to share how SRV has actually helped me look at things in a more positive light. And by doing so, it has taught me to recognize devaluation in its subtle forms, how society infantilizes and desexualizes people with disabilities. And oftentimes, it's been my experience, both as a parent. I want to back up really quick too. I don't speak for any other parents. I'm one parent with one parenting experience, but I do think there are common experiences that I've had being a parent that I've heard among others. And that is that parents and professionals many times are discouraged to have discussions around relationships or sexual health, and they do this is this notion we think we're protecting our person, but it isolates them from healthy learning and healthy experiences. So for me, my understanding is advocacy begins when we start to see our loved ones as worthy and capable of loving. As parents, we can support healthy relationships by first listening and honoring our loved ones' desires and right to self-determination rather than making assumptions. This is true for all my kids. I have five. So this is equally true for all the children that I support in my life and adult children. Offering guidance about boundaries and safety, self-advocacy and consent, they're very important. It's something that must be done with a person, but not for them. And I can share in the end, maybe when we get in discussions, an experience I had where my daughter did date someone and we were put in a situation where the dating partner's family continued to do it for them instead of with them. Modeling healthy relationships is all, I think that's probably the best gift I give to all my children is model a healthy relationship because that's going to provide a safe space for my kids to come talk to me and to validate their feelings rather than dismiss them. Michael, you said something so beautiful, like no relationship is perfect. So when I say model healthy, that is also my kids see conflict. They see us struggle, but they also see us do repair work. My journey has been over the last few years, particularly when my daughter was in a 1 year dating relationship, is to really move from that protector status to a participant. Again, from the SRV perspective, seeing valued roles, my daughter wanted to date, and that was something that was really important to her. So she saw her, she had learned, what's it like to be an employee, learning what it's like to be a friend. And when she came to us and wanted dating, I had to like really check myself on a lot of fears around her safety. I was so much focus on her safety. And anyway, but to realize that I influence how my daughter and other kids see themselves and how others perceive them. So if I see her as a target that someone's going to go after, that's how my daughter's going to see herself. But I really appreciate Jonathan on this, constantly bringing out like there are ways to do this with guardrails, right? We can provide guardrails, and that's just true for all of us. There's good common sense safety stuff, but I'm not ignorant to the fact that I do recognize people with disabilities can be targeted more. But again, if that's where I start and that's the only place, then I'm not going to encourage her to stay in a relationship, to be in relationships, and the dignity of risk that will move her from what many times in the beginning of our story was very service focused life, where she had a lot of providers in her life and a lot of people telling her what to do versus having a full and meaningful life where Mallory chose the relationships that are in her life. Um, we've been talking a lot in my family. Mallory's been the lead in this conversation. Moving from this notion of independence, I think as Americans, we're really focused on independence. And adulthood, as I've got three that are in the college phase and moving on and asking questions like, I don't know how to adult. What is this thing called adulting? And I'm like, well, let's start with what do you think an adulting is? Does it mean, because they'll think, but I don't know how to do this. I'm like, are you supposed to know how to do everything on your own? I think adulting is all about mutual care and community. It's not about learning and knowing how to do stuff on your own. I'm not saying independence doesn't have a place. Interdependence is what strengthens people and communities. We all need to rely on each other. Mike, I so appreciated your vulnerability and your part of like saying like we're getting a lot of help and a lot of care right now. My daughter, and most of that is coming from natural supports. And yet, when and if needed, there can be those other supports that we can let into our lives. My daughter is doing therapy right now, and that is another form of interdependence. She's not dependent on a therapist. She's invited that into her life. Parents can build circles of support instead of build walls of protection. It's something that I'm working on heavily with Mallory, but again, it's not unique to Mallory. It's unique to the human experience. We all need a village. We all need circles of support. I need a village and a circle of support. So that's some of where I'm at right now in my journey. Sexual health and wholeness. Rachel, you did a great job of talking about all of this. Sex and sexuality, it's a natural and important part of the human experience and human identity. And I don't think shying away from it and not talking about it is the answer. We need access to accurate and respectful information, so that we can be educated. And that's where safety comes in, but it also empowers us. Conversations about consent and pleasure and respect are important conversations to have. I think it was Micah when you said if somebody's asking about it, I've treated all my kids with this, then it's time to start answering those questions. If a person is coming and my kids, I don't say, well, if you're at this age, I go with them and we go as, okay, tell me more, ask me more. What is it you're wanting to know? But that to me is a very supporting sexual health education affirms personhood and dignity. It also provides clear guidance. Um, so I talk fast. My gosh, I'm already in my last slide, I think. No, I'm not. I've got another one. So walking the path together. Relationships, love, and sex are rights. They're not privileges. My role has to shift and has shifted from protector to supporter. I'm still growing and learning and unlearning. I hope I always will be. But I think for me, the core is believing in my loved one's capacity to love, helps them believe it in themselves, and for others to believe it too. And another quote from Dr. Wolfensberger is when people are denied their humanity, they die long before the body gives out. Like, I just don't, I want to be a part of helping anybody I know in my life live a very full life, not feeling like they're giving up long before their body gives up. Um, this is really tender to me right now because my head's whirling. My mom is 80 years old, fell yesterday. So I've been thinking a lot. We had a long conversation last night with I have eight brothers and sisters, so we got on a call, and I'll just share this with you really quick. And this doesn't tie to dating, but it does tie to mutual care, mutual aid, caring for one another, and listening to and respecting someone's voice. all eight, nine of us together were like, wait, we need to make sure she's doing this and she's doing that and she's doing this. And finally, and understood and tried to take that in. I said, well, why don't we first ask mom? What is mom needing right now? And how can we respect and also maybe share information of what would be the safest for her after she gets out of the hospital? But let's not take over and becomes mom's voice without centering mom. So I'm just grateful to know those things based on being in a community that where I have been challenged as a mom, as a spouse, as a daughter, how to make sure that I'm believing in my loved one's capacity, not just for love, but decision making. And yeah. So here's some resources. I will drop these in. And Walt, I did update these, so I don't know if you'll be dropping these slides in, but make sure you just grab the latest one. But I can drop these in here. If you want to learn about more about social revitalization, that's a link to their website. There are also the timeliness of this is great. These two links, one is Independence Now, their Instagram, and in the Ride Ahead, they have partnered. If you've not heard of the Ride Ahead, it's a movie, a documentary I would highly recommend watching. It is beautifully done. But they are actually offering Independence Now and the Ride Ahead have partnered, and they are offering a dating series. And I can put that in there in a minute because I can't share my screen and see the information. But it is coming up, I think, on the 24th. It's like one is in a few days, and then the other one is in November. But a lot more in depth on dating and disability. And so I think those would be great opportunities. And when I'll stop sharing here, I can pop those um, to the chat room for everybody. So,
Thank you, Allison.
sure. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
We have a comment from Jonathan in the chat. Great point, Allison, about finding balance. Rachel in the chat says, excellent points about interdependence. Micah in the chat says, parents can build circles of support instead of walls of protection, with a fire emoji and wisdom. And Jonathan in the chat says, the ride ahead was fantastic indeed. Questions or comments for Allison? Oh, Eric asked in the chat, were you going to talk about your daughter, Mallory? Good point, Eric.
Yeah, Mallory is 23 and she came to, well, Mallory's always told me since she was a little bitty, I want to be married, I want to have children. And in full disclosure and honesty, and I'm not proud of it, like I was like, whoa, how that's going to happen. Mallory has both intellectual and physical disabilities. And as a mom, it's like, whoa. And it took me a while to move to, wow, okay, like let's talk about that. And she came to us, let's see, she was 20 and she was introduced to a young man through a mutual friend. And she was not sure if she, was going to date him. And so she asked a lot of good questions like, how do you date? What does that look like? And she started as she said, I think I'd rather be friends first. It's like, okay, well, what does a friendship look like? And so she decided actually, and she kind of walked through, let's start at first, we'll feel safe. Let's go ahead. I just want to text this person. I want to see how they talk. I want to kind of get a sense. And then she moved to, now I'm ready to FaceTime. I want to know, do your words match your nonverbal? Like, how does that feel? And they started FaceTiming. They FaceTime probably for 2 months before she said, I'd like to meet in person. And they met in person and they dated for a good year. The part that was challenging that I believe I was alluding to earlier is this young man had a family who had a very different sense of his capabilities and their role in his dating life. And it was very, very hard. It ultimately ended the relationship because Mallory said very, very wisely, I'm not choosing to be in a relationship with your mother. I'm choosing to be in a relationship with you. And that ultimately is what ended it. And it was very painful because she enjoyed the person, but every conversation she had was shared with the mother. The mother would then try to call me in back channel. I'd say, this is not my relationship. This is between Mallory and this person. And it was very difficult. Couldn't, I can set a boundary, but I can't keep somebody from breaking it. And we continued to get text, and I would continue to say, this is not my relationship. I love and support, both of these individuals, but support does not look like me meddling in their conversations, me checking text, me analyzing how like that. It was just a lot of breaking of their privacy, and ultimately, like I said, unfortunately, it ended that relationship due to that situation. And I don't think that's unique. I'm not blaming the mom for having her fears, but she's accountable for the behaviors she made or that were very intrusive. So I would, as if there's parents on this call, which I assume there are, I can understand those temptations. That is not our place. And Mallory deserves the same dignity and respect that I give and offer to anybody in my life.
Eric says, thank you, Allison, in the chat. And June says, thank you so much. As a mother of a teen, your comment about not being a protective wall, but being a supporter truly inspired me. Micah says in the chat, you mentioned having to check yourself a few times. What have you found most challenging along this journey as a parent?
That's such a good question, Micah. I think, like most people, I'm not unique. My own wounds. We bring our wounds to the table, right? So, my childhood wounds were things that fear me, my experience in relationships. And when I could separate that out and see and recognize that that was that was taking place in all of my parenting, not just with Mallory, it was easier for me to scapegoat the disability and be like, oh, I'm in this case, it's valid or I need to. I had to do my own work. I've had to do my own therapy over the years. I've had to heal my own stuff so that I can be fully present and honor all the people in my life. So yeah, and in relationships where I've had to kind of ask others if they're willing to do their work, right? We all have wounds and we bring those to the table. And like I said, I'm not done. I'm still learning and unlearning. And I'm grateful to be doing that. Good question. Thank you.
Stacy in the chat says, I love shifting from protector to supporter. Hard, but I will try.
Very hard. It's not easy. And I think that's why when I see with this mom the young man's mom, it's hard not to be really angry and overwhelmed by the way that this affected their relationship. But that mom, maybe that's the thing that hopefully will help them to learn. And we are all learning. It's hard. And we make mistakes, and I've made mistakes, but I think it's really important, especially to do repair work when those mistakes step in the way of somebody's dignity and worth. That's it's not okay. We need to clean that up.
Related to that, Katie asked, Katie commented in the chat, yes, Allison, part of what my fiance and I have struggled with is his mother's intrusiveness on his life and speaking on our behalf, sometimes when he is 25 years old and it isn't her place.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Katie. I can empathize. And I try not to offer advice because I believe unsolicited advice can be perceived as criticism.
No,
It's
I
just,
won't commit. You're fine.
yeah, is set those boundaries and loving and remember that you're the one that sets them. And so you're the one that needs to keep them and someone else doesn't. We just set them gently and lovingly and affirm your own worth and his worth. And yeah, I'm grateful and
Yeah.
congratulations on your,
Thank you. Yeah, I know I mentioned obviously everybody has their fair share of problems and everything, but I think part of what ours is
Thank you.
really,
What you send?
we grew up differently in like different environments, different family dynamics, all that sort of thing, and that's really, I think, played a part in some of our problems, and it's been tough, but we're both very spiritual, religious people, and so we put our faith in God, and we're, just trying to trust him with all that, and we pray together and pray for guidance on all of it, and not to bring that into any of this conversation, but that's kind of how we've coped with it and how we've decided to deal with it because it's hard, it is hard, and I know she loves him. She's he's her middle baby. And so, and he's the one that she thinks like is always said he has a big heart, you know, her other two are kind of not always there for her. I get that, but it's just, you know, it's hard when he wants to branch out and make a life for himself and make his own family one day, you know. And
It is.
she has to kind of realize at some point that, you know, he can have them, but he also wants to have his own, you know, or he wouldn't have proposed. So,
Yeah, I really admire what you shared, Katie, as you leaned into your all strengths. You know, like I said, it's whatever that is. And for you, that is your connection to your faith. And so I think that's what I would offer others is lean into those strengths. And again, I believe it was Micah that said something to the effect of, you know, people with disabilities bring a great strength to relationships because they've had to learn to deal with a lot of, they've had to deal with a lot of hardship. And Mallory has taught me a lot because she's had to be up against the hardships of how society sees her and learning how to find her voice.
yeah,
So I
as have
think
I,
that's
so I can
important.
totally relate.
Yeah. So
Um, I don't
Cody,
know if I
oh,
mentioned,
sorry, Katie. Go
you're,
ahead.
fi- I don't know if I mentioned when I first gave my little spiel, I was born with spina bifida, and you know, like I said, I use a wheelchair and walker to get around a lot, and I really struggled mentally and emotionally with dating, you know, my early 20s, and I was with friends who were, you know, w finding partners and some even getting married, having, you know, families of their own, having kids and stuff, and I really struggled with it and when I was in college and kind of got to the point where I was so discouraged with it before I met him that I just kind of almost wanted to give up. And he really showed me that not everybody's like, not everybody's going to see me the way that I had been seen prior to him, and that I, you know, I do have something to bring to the table, and I'm special in my own way, and you know, like I said, or like you were saying earlier, lean into those strengths and that kind of thing. So because everybody's special, and everybody can find their person.
I
They're
agree. I
special.
think something you brought up, Katie, that's so important that I wanted to offer and piggyback on Cody. I appreciate so much your online dating experience, sharing all of that. That's one thing that my daughter is ready to explore. When you've been in a situation that was really hard, and Micah, and I heard that in your story too, and I have my own personal stories with that, it's hard to get back into those games. And so that's where, again, I look at myself as I don't need to be Mallory's protector, right? And tell her, oh my gosh, this one bad experience, because she really was like, I'm done. I'll never date again. And to
Mhm.
just be there to encourage her and to share my experience, strength, and hope and things that I've been through. And that's been really interesting because she's just now starting to come to us, Cody, and she's found a good friend in her life that's about 7 years older than her, a young lady that's like, I can help you with that. I can show you my experience with online dating. And so, yeah, it's bringing other people into her life. It doesn't need to be me alone. And so we're bringing people around her that are part of her village that are helping her look into that space again.
One of my college friends is actually the reason that I got on to the online dating scene to begin with. I had never considered it prior to that, and she was like, "Well, why don't you get on Tinder?" And I was like, "Ah, it's a little out of my comfort zone. I don't know if I want to do that, you know." And not that I'm shy or anything. I do have a big personality, and I'm extroverted, and you know, but I just I never saw that as like an avenue I wanted to explore. I was like nervous about it because you see, you know, there are so many, as we've mentioned, there's so many people who are doing it for the wrong reasons. They're out there and, you know, their mindset is not on truly finding their person. It's on, you know, we we live in a society where unfortunately like the hookup culture and things like that is prevalent. And for somebody who wants a future, you know, with somebody, it's tough to find that on things like that sometimes. So that was part of uh my reservations with it, I guess. I couldn't find the word. But yeah, but I eventually gave into it and I said, sure, why not? And gave it a couple weeks, couple different people that I connected with and was ready to give up on it almost. And then I came across Zach and it just clicked and the
Well,
rest is
thank you.
history. So
Yeah, thank you again for sharing that. I appreciate you sharing your experience, which offers a lot of people hope.
yeah.
August, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
August has a hand raised.
Yeah, I had many questions. But one of them, I guess, is as a parent to somebody who was once a child with a disability and now is a disabled adult. And I loved what you said, going from protector to supporter. Can you give a little insight about your experience and like how you were able to transition into that with your adult, now that they're like in college and stuff like that, and being able to give them some more independence, but of course, being interdependent is also the way to go. So I was wondering if you could just speak about your experience a little bit.
Sure. Thanks for the question, August. To give you a little bit of background, Mallory had a grade 4 bleed. So she had a severe brain injury bleed, like within 23 hours after being born. So we were thrown in the disability space right away. And didn't had no idea what we were dealing with. So the best way I can characterize the first several years of her life, we lived in a medical model because that's what we were given. And so our focus was on survival and skill development, right? It was like get her the best team, the PT, the best OT, the best everything, and make sure that she can walk and talk, all those things that like, how do we help her to do this? So unfortunately, that's the best we had at the time. But that's what we gave her. And so success looked like, well, if we can beat all the odds and Mallory can walk, or if we can beat all the odds and she can spell and read. And then I started to say, this isn't enough. She entered school and then started having questions about relationships for her and what does that look like and friends. And so we started looking at more of her social emotional. Not that that was ignored, but there was a huge emphasis on seeing if she could meet these developmental marks. And
Mhm.
that's how everybody spoke to us. Nobody was saying, how is she doing emotionally? They just assumed she was okay. And then it came to one, Lind has been a big impact. But one, working in this space is just being educated on other models, such as the disability justice model and Mallory. We've always let Mallory kind of guide. And so when I look back, I need to forgive myself on some of those things, but also realize I was listening to Mallory with what her body wanted. And when days were hard, I would say to no to the PT or no to the OT, or if they were expecting something and she wasn't meeting a mark, I was like, do we have to meet it today? Maybe she's going to hit that in 3 years. So it's not that I wasn't advocating and didn't see Mallory's dignity and worth, but when Mallory started to have her voice in a more clear way, it was
Mhm.
very helpful for me. And that doesn't mean, again, Mallory was telling us things nonverbal for a long time. Um, so as she has developed her sense of self, that has helped guide me in new ways and continues to challenge me. But I also think it was just my value of relationships and my value of there has to be more than this than just trying to hit some marks and making her quote unquote normal. So unraveling that a lot, August, and what we were being told and pushing back a lot on practitioners. We lost practitioners who didn't agree with me. We've had doctors that said, if you don't like it, go to another doctor. And so we did. We'll continue to do that. She's with
Yes,
great,
that's great.
yeah.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. And she's with doctors now that they respect her, they listen to her.
Mhm.
Say, does your mom want to come back in the room? Mallory decides, like, right?
Yeah.
It's finding the right people in our lives that support us and stumbling and learning along the way, making mistakes, which again you have to forgive and ask for forgiveness. We had a conversation this morning where we were butting heads about something and she had to be somewhere and she just looked at me and it was the sweetest thing. And she said, and this is her doing her own work too, she said, I think that's just coming from an old feeling. And I was like, thank you for sharing, because two, in her space, she'll tell you sometimes I can easily blame it on my mom. And that's an easy target versus saying, ooh, I think that was just coming from an old space in me and our old thoughts and old feelings. And I just said, well, thanks for letting me know. And I
Mhm.
got a big hug. So it's a journey and we're
Yeah.
learning together.
Yeah,
So
that's great. That's beautiful. Do
thank
you
you.
uh do you like have any advice for, parents who are kind of not able to become that protector to supporter? Uh,
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we have to start. I go back to woundedness. Look at our, like, find your village, people that will
Mhm.
support and challenge you and not sitting in an echo chamber that just feeds back to you what you want to hear. Be willing to listen to advice and experiences that might be challenging. I mean, I'm not kidding you. Lynn, I had known a lot, but even there were times in the classroom with the self advocates, and I would be challenged and be like, oh, I'm so grateful. It's be open, be willing to learn and start from a place of we don't have all the answers. You know, nobody asked me when I had my, I didn't have a resume. I didn't get checked for if I know how to do this. I don't have all the answers. And
Yeah.
like I said, I don't, there's so much I've had to learn to let go of and surrender with everything from my body to my past experiences to knowledge. Like I'm not the end all be all. And so being open to learn from people has been probably the best advice, August, that I would give any new parent is to say, be open, be open.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And your presentation, of course.
Thank you for being here.
Micah in the chat says, yes, I was just about to say, on the one hand, how frustrating that ableism and the mom's own baggage was showing up that way, but also what a normative experience with a disabled twist. I've heard of non-disabled couples who have split up because the man wouldn't set boundaries with his mom.
Mm. Yeah,
Any
I agree.
agree? Yeah. Any other comments or questions for Allison?
I
Thank
did put in there
go.
really quick so you guys know those are the best links. Those to the right ahead, to the dating series. So if you want to just grab those links and keep them, it'll have the information on there. One's Instagram, one's on Facebook.
Yeah. Thank you for dropping those links in the chat, Allison.
You're welcome.
Olivia says, I love they ask if she wants you in the room.
Yeah, I do too. Mallory's in charge, not me.
Right. Thank you, Allison. We appreciate your time and sharing your story with us today. As advertised, this has been great. It's been an honor and a privilege for all of you to join us today. I want to thank our presenters for taking time out of their day to share their expertise with us. We are so grateful for the variety of perspectives which brought richness to the conversation. Thank you for an incredibly informative presentation. Be well and stay safe, everybody. Thank you.